Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Theory Podcast. I am your host, Jason Venturelli. We have a very special guest, very interesting topic here today for all you entrepreneurs and all you people looking to get into either your own business or be successful at your 9 to 5. There's a lot of people out there who aren't interested in starting their own business, but actually want to be happy day to day. And we're here to talk about that. We have Penelope Prezkop today. She is a CEO and author, writer. She's the founder, CEO of PDC Pharma Strategies, 30 years in the business. She has a book, 5-Star Career. Yes, we all can have that 5-star career. And that's what we're here to talk about. Penelope, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yes, so happy to have you here. So let's jump right into it. That's what we do here at New Theory. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and how you got into what you do today.
Sure. Okay. So, I started out in college. I was in pre-med actually, and fell in love with biology in college. In high school, I thought I didn't like science, but I discovered it and ended up going into a PhD program and then going into the pharma industry. I didn't finish the PhD program, but I met my husband. Not that, I'm old fashioned like that. There's reasons why, but I met my husband there, which was great. And moved up to Pennsylvania, New Jersey area where there's a lot of pharma companies, especially at that time. And so I got into the
Jersey does have a lot of pharma companies. Yep.
It does. I mean, there's more in other areas of the country now, but back then that was the early 90s. A lot of it was there, right where we were. So that was, really good for me because I grew up in Louisiana. And there's not too much down there. So in terms of pharma companies, but so I just, started out in the lab and got into the quality and compliance areas and just, worked my way up over the years, ups and downs.
And when you say work your way up, where did you start? And then what do you mean?
I started in the lab. So doing preclinical research, and it wasn't my favorite thing, but I quickly realized that I probably wasn't going to progress there if I didn't have a master's or PhD in a scientific field. Gotcha. That's just how it is. So I did a cross training that was offered to me in quality assurance. And that was really great because probably 6 months or a year later, I ended up being able to get a position outside of the lab and, quality assurance. So through that, through my career, I've gone through a lot of different departments and, in pharma, there's different areas, R&D, and then there's functions that focus on marketed pharmaceutical products. Right. And then there's manufacturing, there's a lot of different things.
Yeah, of course.
So I've done a lot over the years and kind of always had the thread of quality assurance or quality management. And at first I thought, well, this is terrible. Like I'm jumping around a little bit as far as functions. But then I started to realize it was an advantage because, at one point it was sort of like, well, somebody my age has 8 years of experience in this one function, but I have 8 years across some functions.
Right.
But I realized with the quality perspective, that was actually a blessing. And, there's very few highly experienced quality assurance professionals in pharma who have really deep and wide cross-functional, cross, pharmaceutical life cycle stages experience. Right. And so I was actually able to build that. And so that's really been great. So it just shows you, sometimes you think things are not the way they should be, but, you have to kind of look at it in all different ways, a different perspective.
And explain to our viewers, quality management expert. Explain that.
Okay. So there's a science called quality management, which many people are not aware of, but it's pretty much really a strong it's strongly utilized and practiced in manufacturing,
Gotcha.
Particularly in highly regulated industries,
The
because
pharmaceutical industry.
right, or even aerospace, nuclear, pharmaceutical, because if you're selling hairbrushes, you want your hairbrush to be perfect, of course, and if it's not, you're going to lose business. But in these highly regulated industries, if your product is defective, people could die. So
right,
you need, these industries had realized, and the regulators that watch over them also realized, this is really critical for these industries. So,
and real quick, not to side jump here.
No, it's okay.
The food industry, quality management. Yeah, I mean, is what's a high? Who sets a higher bar? Pharmaceutical or the food industry? Pharmaceutical, correct?
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert in the food industry.
Right.
There's a lot of regulations
around
food now. Certainly more around. I mean, I'm not an expert, so beef and all these kinds of things than say a restaurant. But there's there's regulations, but so it's hard for me to say. But I'm guessing pharmaceutical is more complex.
Okay, so please continue. So going back to the quality.
Right. So pharma companies they're required to have really quality assurance and quality management professionals who help them make sure that they're following all of these regulations that apply to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I got into. So, doing a lot of audits of clinical investigator sites, where they're doing clinical research with people.
Right. Gotcha.
There's a lot of regulations, though, even on, some of the lab work, certainly, research with animals, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And there's just so many regulations about reporting.
And you had a team, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, not when I started. I mean, when I started, I was working for someone,
Right.
But yeah, over so many years, I kind of, worked my way up, if you will, with promotions and things like that. And for quite a few years, I was a global director of global quality management at Johnson & Johnson for pharmacovigilance, which is drug safety, which is one specific area. And I had a big team of people. But after I left J&J, I really started consulting. And so, I have some employees and I have some people I work with, but, a lot of my work I do, it's a small company. But
now, when going back to when you started, got your experience, you were working for somebody else, were you, was money a big factor in your decision making on taking certain positions? Was it more of a, am I interested in doing this? Can I do it? Am I going to be happy doing it? Did somebody put an offer in front of you and say, you know what, hey, it's an offer I can't refuse, really, kind of thing? Where did you stand on that?
Well, I think, now that I've been in the workforce for so many years, I've had a lot of different scenarios. I started in the lab because that made sense. I had a degree in biology. Gotcha. And that's where the job was for me. I took advantage of the opportunity to do the cross training, and that turned out to be a smart thing because then I, got my other job. After that, I really, part of what always motivated me was that I wanted to be, I'm a very independent person. I wanted to be either the leader or, I'd never liked somebody looking over my shoulder.
Right.
And I always felt like, not because I'm doing anything wrong, it's just me, how I am. But,
that's a natural human instinct to have.
Right. But to me, logically, I thought, well, the higher up I get in my work, I have more chance that somebody's not looking over my shoulder, So that really motivated me even more than salary. It may sound crazy to some people, but the ability to be independent, right? And to also be more comfortable to be an independent thinker and apply, my ideas without having to convince someone else. I mean, you always have to, get other people to
But they do pay well. They do compensate you for your knowledge,
Well,
your
sure. And
time.
I mean, I was
Right.
real
Yeah.
happy about that. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never been one that was really focused on my salary. It sounds crazy, but my husband had always told me, oh, just, make sure your base salary is always increasing. And I thought, okay, so I just focused on that. And, a lot of people say, oh, well, of course, but I just wasn't the type of person that was thinking about that,
Yeah.
right?
I know people like that. I know people who
Yeah,
take
and my
career
husband
paths.
is much more financial minded, and he,
Mhm.
so I've actually learned a tremendous amount from him. Of course, I had to be responsible for budgets and things like that,
Right.
um, but yeah, and I love being a consultant because again, I'm very independent. Um, I work well with others, of course, I really do. I love working with people, but
Well, let's go into that. So you're working for Big Pharma. Okay. Now you decide what I'm going to go on my own. I'm going to start a consultant firm. Who was in your circle? Who were you talking to about doing this? Who was rooting for you? Who was saying, "Oh, wait a minute, what are you doing?" People have
right,
those friends and family and maybe
mhm,
spouses that say, "Oh, hey, what are we doing here?" You know.
right.
So tell us about that jump and tell us that story.
Well, I kind of fell into it in that. So I was at J&J in 2008, and I'd been, really good employee, high ratings, all of this stuff, And when I guess it was part of the big housing crash or whatever, a lot of big companies were,
Yep.
laying off people. So I was shocked I got laid off, and later I realized it was kind of the top three, the people in my unit that kind of have the top three salaries, we all got cut. And just personally, it was such a blow to me because at that time in
Mm.
my life, I had really built up my self-esteem through my career, and I didn't understand why they would cut me. It's like they give you awards and raises and great ratings, and then all of a sudden the next day, oh, sorry, there's the door.
What what have we all learned in the last 15 years? And I'm not saying this is all companies, I'm blanking, but a lot of companies here's a number,
Yeah.
here's a
I mean,
budget.
the people that you know and work with, they do care about you, but in the end, it's business. And
Correct.
I took it very personally, but I got over it. I learned, I understand now. But so a friend of mine, a guy that my husband and I knew, um, was working as a consultant, and he was going to take a job at the FDA, and he needed someone to kind of take up his consulting role. So I ended up doing that for, about a year and a half. And then I went back to a company for a couple of years in a permanent position, but was still doing a little consulting, and they knew it. But that's when I realized, well, wait a minute, I like being a consultant,
Right.
So then I really went back more proactively and said, I'm going to do this. And I had a lot to learn, as far
Right.
as how to talk to clients, how to talk about even like what are my consulting rates and, things that I'd
Right.
never had to
Now,
do.
did you hire a consultant to learn all of that?
No, in my
Self-taught.
industry, maybe some other industries too, I started out really getting a lot of work through, other consulting companies, like bigger companies,
Right.
and you do something for them. And I still do that a little bit, but
But
um,
don't brush over that. How did you get the work? How did you start?
mhm.
I mean, again, so let's start from the bottom. How did you start? You emailed people, hey, listen, or they emailed you for some advice. You gave them advice, and there it sparked a relationship. I mean, how did that
Um,
work?
no, what I did at the time, and this was around 2000. Well, it was, after I went to the permanent job and then
Right.
decided I'm going to be a consultant. I went on, I think we had LinkedIn then, different online areas where, I looked for these companies, these consulting companies.
Mhm.
And so I just reached out to them and said, this is my experience. Now, obviously,
Oh,
I had quite a bit of experience by
yeah,
then.
yeah.
I'd worked for J&J, a couple other big pharma companies. And so, I had to go through a process of sharing my CV and all of that. But they really helped me to learn because, I was working with them and I could ask them the questions. They were setting up the business with the client, right?
Got you. Okay.
So I did that for a while. And then I also met some other consultants, but it's tricky because you don't always want to say, well, what's your rate? What's your rate?
Yeah.
I did research online.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to figure it out sometimes. And then
you don't want to be too high, but you don't want to be too low either.
Exactly. And I did a project with a gentleman, older gentleman that was really very, very experienced, after I'd been doing that for a few years. And he's the one that told me, he said, you could get your own clients, you should be able to do that by now. And, go to industry meetings, call people, because as a consultant, you do get a higher rate if you're not working with another consultant,
Right.
And I wanted to do that. So that's when I started. And it took me a couple of years to really get to the point where most of my work is direct, have direct clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is a process, and you just have to chip away. One time, because of my home situation, I'd been traveling a lot, and then my husband got a job that he had to travel, and we still had a kid in high school. So I took a consulting position that was, like full-time, no travel. So people were calling me to do work, and I was having to say no, but because I told them what I was doing.
Yeah.
But then as time went on, I made sure that I emailed them every once in a while. And then this is when I was working with the other companies,
right.
To just check in and everything. And then they were all very happy when my 2-year thing was up, because they were ready to, have me help them. And I think looking back, that was smart, because I didn't want to lose all those contacts, that I'd made.
Did you have a goal? Like a lot of people, put down on paper, okay, in 3 months, I'd love to have, 2 clients. In 6 months, you set a goal of how many clients and how many months, or, what was your goal setting when you first started? Or, it wasn't just, let's see what happens, right? You had a plan.
Right. When I first started, there were even some days in each month that I wasn't working, right? Because I didn't have, that much. I had plenty of work for what I needed, but, whereas now I find myself having to turn down work because I've a lot, which is a great problem to have. But, but yeah, when I really threw myself into it, especially to get my own clients, I think my goals were a little looser than that. I said, within a year, I want, 60% of my work to be with direct clients.
Yeah.
And it depends on what you do, because, what kind of consultant you are. Like, in other words, depending on the work you do, you might just have 2 clients, and that might keep you busy for a year,
Right.
Whereas other types of work, you might have to have 2 new clients every month. So it's, it varies. But one thing I give this advice to people on LinkedIn. I noticed that a lot of consultants in my industry anyways would put in LinkedIn, like, say you're doing a lot of work with a consulting firm or one company, and they would list that as their job, right? Well, I decided I wasn't going to do that, because I wanted to keep myself listed as a consultant. And I think it really worked out well, because, what I learned about LinkedIn is people go on there and they're looking for a consultant. So if they, do their searches and it looks like you're, working full time for this company, they just automatically, or it's not even going to come up in their search, or it doesn't look like you're open to hear from them.
Gotcha.
So I always recommend that people, you could list like companies you're working with or have worked with in the description,
right?
But keep yourself as a consultant,
right? In that little bio,
in the bio,
yeah, that's a good tip. That's a really good tip,
and in your jobs, like the
right,
2
job,
years,
right?
the 2 years that I worked for the one company, I could have put such and such company. And it looks like I worked there for 2 years, but I was a consultant working for them. So I didn't do that. I just kept it. I'm a consultant.
Right. So a year goes by. Did you hit your goal? Did you was 60%, or were you near that 60%, or were you above and beyond that?
No, I did. I mean, again, I didn't track it so closely,
Right.
But it took me a couple of years to be about 80% with direct clients. So, it's not overnight.
No, but that was my point. I mean, it's not a quick. Well, February 1st, you start, and then by February 29th, you're successful. People think, if they don't see success in the first 1, 2, 3 months, they're giving up. I'm just going to go back to corporate. I'm going to give up this, my dreams of becoming whatever it is. And it's not quick. It's a lot of ups, downs, investment of time and money. So,
and I'll say too, I've ended up meeting a lot of my clients in the last couple of years because they've read articles that I've written. So I don't write articles to generate business necessarily. I'm a writer. I like to write. But a lot of people have reached out to me because they read my article and such and so. So that's, if you're in a position to do that, I think that's a good thing.
Right.
Articles that would be read by your industry.
Of course. Yeah. Yes. So now you got how many clients?
Well, it varies, but right now I have 3 or 4. I have 4 that I have ongoing sort of contract with.
Gotcha.
And then, I have 1 that I'm doing something for in March.
And there are companies that are in and out. They come back, they're out.
Well, yeah, it depends. Like the 4 that I have that are ongoing, I have a contractual agreement with them to work X number of hours a month.
Okay.
Through the end of the year, something like that.
Gotcha.
The other ones are more specific to a project, in March, I'm going to do a mock inspection. So that's what the contract's for. Right.
Gotcha.
So if they want me to work with them after that, I'll have to have either, another contract or something.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But you stay busy at this point. Like you said, you're turning down work. Right.
Yes. And actually, I got a little crazy during COVID because I started accepting a lot more because I thought, well, I can't go anywhere. It's like I might as well sit here and do work. And my kids, now, were empty nesters. So I didn't have that to distract me. So at the end of this year, I really made a commitment to myself that I was going to try to not be a workaholic and, have a reasonable schedule. So, and I know I feel very fortunate to, like I said, these are great problems to have, but I really believe that, if people do reach out, if you have a certain amount of experience, and just be confident about what you know and reach out. One problem that comes up though, is if you work with clients under a contract with another consulting company, there's usually something in your contract that says, you're not supposed to go and then work directly with that client,
Right. Yeah.
Because they introduced you. And usually there's a time period like for a year or for 2 years.
Like a non-compete or I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So I had to really, when I decided to I wanted direct clients, I had to really go through my contracts and think about, I had some people I could call, but I wasn't supposed to. So I made sure I didn't do that. So that, that's a little tricky. And that can get you down a little bit thinking, well, gosh, I have all these great contacts, but I can't work with them, but you have to be careful though, because you don't want to get in trouble. You don't want your reputation to suffer. So.
And would you say it's fair to, if somebody out there watching now is an expert in, they've had many years of experience, they know their stuff, right? consulting is another career opportunity for them.
Oh yeah. And I read an article the other day, I can't remember where it was, but somebody was writing and saying, consultants are experts at talking to you and, trying to figure out what else can I do for you. And then
Right. Always trying to find the problem so they can stay on the
it
payroll.
sounded very, snarky. And I'm really not like that. I mean, I really enjoy helping people. And I'll suggest something to them, but, if they want somebody else to do it, that's fine. But I feel like part of what I need to do for them is share my ideas. And I will say too, there are consultants who are sort of like a one person income, that's harder, right? Because you don't have benefits. You have to keep up and pay your own taxes. You want to steady, maybe you really need a steady income. So that is trickier. But, fortunately for me, my husband, we have the benefits through his company.
Right.
And so that made it a little easier for me.
Anything that you're going to jump into, prepare yourself financially, healthcare, whatever it may be.
Right.
Your spouse, your family, of course. Right.
And make sure you pay your estimated taxes.
Yeah. Right.
Unless you're just really good at saving up your money, because you could get hit at the end of the year.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So let's jump in now to your writing. Okay. You said, you know what, I can teach people. Okay. You're already consulting these big companies. I can show people how to live a life of abundance as far as, freedom, time, happiness. And that's not just being an entrepreneur. And by the way, everyone, just because you own your own business doesn't mean that you're on the beach sipping Mai Tais and, just answering and working off your cell phone. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurs, 9-to-5 people, everybody works hard if they're dedicated, motivated. Everybody works hard, especially if you're running your own business. You're the main person. If you don't work, nothing gets done. Paychecks don't come in. Nobody, stuff doesn't happen. But tell me a little bit about, let's dive into the book and how we can show people they can be happy in their careers, either an entrepreneur or their 9-to-5s.
Sure. So I wrote this book because, as I mentioned, my area of expertise in the pharma industry is quality management, quality assurance,
Right.
So over the years, I really started to apply these concepts to my own life in terms of, how to recognize an issue and how to think about, what's the root cause of this and how can I address it without blaming, somebody else. Because in business,
right,
you can't do that. You can't, at least in regulated businesses where you have to put in a corrective action or something. You can't, it's unacceptable to say, well, the root cause is, Jim next door is not real smart and didn't do his job. You just can't. Yeah. So you kind of learn to look at things from a very different lens and sort of a process lens. And so I thought, well, why don't people do that in life?
So true.
I never was one to blame other people, but a lot of people do. They're not taught this process improvement science, really.
Right.
So I wrote this book that talks about how to apply those concepts used in manufacturing and even service industries for companies to make sure that their clients are satisfied, right? So it has to do with, recognizing issues or planning properly, then recognizing issues, correcting them properly so they don't happen again, learning from it. Also, making decisions based on risk, benefit, doing risk analysis. And so I thought, well, everybody talks about quality of life, but I still don't know anybody's like applying these concepts to regular life, So I did begin to do that in my own life. So I was really excited to write the book. And I share a lot of my own experience, but I take the readers through just, basic overview of what quality management is, and then how they can apply this personally to, visualize the outcome they want. Like they're the customer, if you think of it that way. What product do they want? If you consider your life or your career as a product and you're the customer, but you also, it sounds confusing, but you also are the manufacturer, which is true in business too. A lot of people end up manufacturing products because they needed something, right? So the whole idea is going through that process of identifying what it is you're trying to create, how you're going to create it, how to recognize issues, what to do when an issue comes up so that you can stay on the right path, make the right decision so you don't get sidetracked, and really build that product for yourself, and really, taking responsibility for it, understanding your system, there's a lot of systems thinking in this, like, what do you have control over and what do you really not?
Take us through, if you will, take us through a lesson, and I'll simplify it. Let's go back to the blame game. Okay, that's what a lot of people love to do. And you know what? They do it without even realizing they're doing it. And some people don't even mean, it's not like, they're trying to tell us. It's just like, oh, this person didn't do this, or this department didn't do this, and they're not doing it. Give us a lesson here. And when you have that thought, how should we process it, and how should we be proactive about somebody in that situation?
Right. So I have a lot of examples in my book, real simple examples, and, examples from my own life. But so, for example, if you said, this is a silly example, really, but
let's
if you
be silly. Come on. Come on.
If you said, well, I'm hungry and I'm on a diet and I have to eat a frozen, lean cuisine because I have to, but I don't have any more. So what am I going to do? Am I going to cheat on my diet? Or, you think about, what are your options, right? I'm going to eat something else today, or I'm going to get in my car and go to the store and buy it. Or I'm going to go around the neighborhood and knock on doors and say, do you happen to have a lean cuisine? So, if you think about those options, you can't control if someone else has a lean cuisine, right?
Correct.
You can go to the store and get one. Like, do you want to do that? If you say, well, I don't feel like going. Well, okay, you don't have to, but that's your choice, right? You made that choice. And so in the end, you don't have a lean cuisine. So if you cheat on your diet, you have to take responsibility. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, you could say, what was the other one? Well, I'm going to eat something else. Well, okay, nobody's going to make you eat something else. You have these options. So what if you said, well, I'm going to go ask my neighbor, and you went and asked a couple neighbors, and they don't have any lean cuisines, and you're just so frustrated, so you go home and eat something else, and then you're just so down and out, and you just get so mad. I can't believe these neighbors didn't have a lean cuisine for me. Like, what the heck, and you're it's a stupid example, but it's like you're blaming them,
right,
something
for something that you had options and you had control over.
You decided the option where you needed to depend on something that,
and not only that, let's talk about moving forward. That already happened. You don't have what you needed.
Right.
Now, how can we fix this?
Right.
And we don't need to get the email universe involved, the blame game, emailing this department, CCing this department, and this. So,
right.
How can we fix this?
Yes. Yeah, so, the key is, when you look at your options, to really, if you can understand what you have control over, and, you can think of all the options, but in those options, two things you have to consider, what control do you have in that scenario if you choose that option? And also, what is the risk if you choose that option?
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing really too is, do you have control? What's the risk? I guess the risk is related to this, that, what is it going to cost you? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times people do have options, but they don't want to sort of pay the price, and then they want to blame other people because they said, well, the option that I had control over was too hard, too expensive, or would take too long, But yeah, I mean, back to your question about email, I guess you're talking about work again. In my area, in pharma and regulated industries, the truth is sometimes things happen that are other people's fault, or other department. I mean, it's true. It's human nature. Maybe the guy in the next office is truly not qualified for his job, but, you can't do anything about that. You didn't, I mean, if you're not his boss, like you can't change him. You're not his boss, so you can't blame him and expect that to impact your problem. Like you
And let me tell you something. If you believe you're at the right company or you're working for the right people, that's going to show down the road where you've picked up the ball when somebody else dropped it. Okay.
Right.
So, instead of saying, oh, he, she, this department, whatever, pick the ball up, get it done. People will notice, uppers will notice if you truly believe you're at the right place, and you'll prosper that way. You'll prosper more that way than saying, pushing issues on other people.
Right. But, I talk about scenarios, I try to be really honest and upfront and say, okay, sometimes you do find yourself working with people who are very difficult to work with.
Yes.
For whatever reason.
We've been there.
And, maybe you've picked up the slack, you've tried everything, and you're just beaten down. You're not having a 5-star career.
Right.
So what do? So you still have options. Your options are, you could resign. You can go and look for another job. Mm-hmm. And if you say, well, I shouldn't have to do that. Blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe you shouldn't have to do it, but that's what's in your control to do.
That's in your control.
You do that.
Yes.
You're sure you've done everything. Mm-hmm. You either have to do that so that you'll be happier, or you have to live with these people that are driving you crazy. And then you're not going to be happy unless you accept it and kind of stop complaining, because it's like tough love.
You're in control. Yeah, you're in control of your own, your own happiness.
Right. If your only option is to resign and you're not willing to do it, then you have to face the fact that you have made a choice, and your choice was to stay there when there's no other option. So, I hate to say, just accept you'll be miserable. I mean, this all sounds really sad, but it's just, I mean, we're exaggerating, but it's the mindset. You could also say, well, I've done everything I can. I'm going to have to go talk to that person's boss, which is very tricky.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to think about the risk, right? Are you willing to take the risk that, that will backfire on you? Mm-hmm. If you're extremely desperate and you don't want to get another job, you might be willing to do that. I don't know. But the point is, what
or how about, and a lot of people nowadays, I don't know if it's just me getting older, but, people don't want to talk to people. They'd rather text or email. How about addressing the person, if you're in the same building, I mean, of course, or calling the person, say, hey, listen, we worked on this together. How can we do better next time together? How can I be better for you?
That's a big thing. And I talk about these things in the book because, there are a lot of people that feel totally comfortable and they're, okay, I'm going to go in there and talk about this. I mean, I'm more comfortable with it now than I was as a young person. Some people are just horrified, even if they don't want to admit it, to go and confront someone.
And when we say confront, we're not saying walk in there or call someone with an attitude. It's people.
No, I didn't mean it that way, but go in and just say, I need, we need to talk.
Hey, what happened here? What did I do? What did you do? What can we do better?
Because in quality assurance and quality management, part of what I do, well, I've learned I do have to, not confront, it's not combative, but I have to ask those questions of people, and I have to be comfortable with, telling them that they're giving me an incorrect answer, or it's not good enough, or, it's kind of an art to it. But it's, it took me a long time to really develop my own style with that and be comfortable, because people don't like to give bad news or negative, whatever. But what I was going to say, in manufacturing, where this science began, see, if you had an issue with the widget, right, whatever, with the product, if the product was a hairbrush, and it was broken somehow, you have to go and find the root cause. Why did this hairbrush break? And, what are we going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again? And what are the options? Which options are, are associated with risks? It might be a risk that, well, this option costs $2 million and this one does, you know what I mean? It's this thinking. And that's what people do in this science in manufacturing. So hopefully I haven't explained it in a confusing way.
You did. But, no, you didn't. You did not. You did not. You thoroughly explained it.
Some of it is counterintuitive. And I talk about sports, like my daughter's a track athlete at Stanford, and she's been training her whole life, and these elite athletes really, they call it training, but really what they do is quality management. They do things over and over again. They follow, especially, like, she's a high jumper, so there's a process, right? And all these little intricate moves, and they just, every time they do it, if it doesn't work, they say, well, what went wrong? What can I do better? But see, they have a specific goal in their mind, or product, right? I want to be the winner, and that's what I'm trying to do. And so, we can do that in our own lives about what we want, what do we want, and it's not, it's sometimes it takes soul searching, because it's just really, it took me a long time to really be comfortable to sort of be in my own skin and say, well, this is what I want, not what, the culture I grew up in wanted, or my mom wanted, or, my boss.
And it's important to have that plan and write that plan out, very important.
Sorry.
Right? No,
yes, be goal oriented.
Yeah.
Because if you don't really
but don't just say it in the shower, okay? Literally, pen to paper, write down a plan, okay?
Right. And I do, I've always been a sort of overdone my list writing, but I write. I had this one employee one time, and I would give her something to do, and she was a very smart lady, but she was very detail oriented.
Yeah.
And if I gave her the big picture, she would come in my office and just be really stressed. Like, I don't know how to start. I don't, and I would always just say, okay, let's just break it down into the steps. And if you do that and take the time to do that, then you start at step one. And I mean, I didn't talk to her like, down to her. You start at step one, and then you focus on step one. You don't worry about all the other steps. That's the way I started writing books. I was so overwhelmed, and I thought, well, I'll just take it one chapter at a time. Because if I thought about the rest of it, it was just, oh my gosh, how could I ever write, all those words?
Right.
And that kind of process comes naturally to a lot of people, but there's a lot of people that it doesn't. I mean, that woman, I loved her to death, but she had trouble just thinking through what the steps would be, but she had other, fantastic skills that I needed in my team, so.
That's interesting. Did you ever think about coaching in how to become a consultant? I mean, the coaching industry is huge. I mean, people would love to learn how they could take their expertise and become a consultant.
Right.
Have you ever thought about doing something like that? Has anybody ever come across you and talked to you about that? Has that been on your list of things or anything, maybe down the road?
Yeah, I've had a couple of people talk to me, not for a fee or whatever, but, ask my advice about how to get into consulting. One thing I love about my job is I feel like I naturally do a lot of coaching with my clients, right? Because they're asking me for, advice, and I look at a certain scenario and say, well, this, and that, considering this, and this, here's what I would do. You know what I mean?
Right.
And every company's different, and every person's different. So I think people really, I don't know if it's me or somebody else that would help them, but really look at your own life and all the different aspects and come up with a plan, rather than saying, oh, here's this cookie cutter plan I read, how to be a consultant. It just might not fit for you, So, but anyways, I have thought about that. I do a lot of training, and, so I thought about that.
That's interesting. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Because coaching, I do a little bit of coaching myself. I have a mentorship course that, I teach people. One of my businesses that I do is business loans, and we do real estate investment loans as well. So I teach people how they can become a broker and how they get involved in that. So you came to mind when we had this subject. I'm like, you'd be good at, the coaching aspect too, because there are a lot of people out there who want to take what they know and become a consultant in that.
Yeah, I think I would enjoy that. And I'm not so sure that my advice would be the same as, all the other coaches. I don't know. Like I just have to, give, I try to think very logically. I'm not a salesy person. I don't approach it as, I don't know.
That's funny, because you do have to sell yourself out there to companies and to gather a business. So, but I know what you mean. You're more on the technical side of things, right? More than.
But I think my clients like me too, because I'm just down to earth, and I don't do it on purpose to get their business, but I just really believe in interacting well with people and just being a normal person, and showing them that I want to help them, and I just be very honest. And if it's not a good fit, then that's fine, but if it is, then I feel like they feel comfortable with me and they trust me, because I think as a consultant, well, I've seen and heard from clients and other people, for example, there might be one consultant who, I don't know, looks better on paper, or has a PhD from Harvard or something, I don't know. And then there's another one who certainly has a lot of experience, but maybe not on paper. Maybe this one looked better, but they often want to choose the person that they feel comfortable with, and that they feel really truly cares about them and their company. And so if I feel like if they get a vibe of, used car salesman type thing or whatever, especially small companies, because I've heard from a lot of small companies that when they have consultants come in that are used to working with huge companies, I work with all sizes, but some of these real polished, and I'm not trying to put them down or anything. I think some big companies expect this, right? They come in and they're very polished, and they have, I don't know, they're just very, I don't know how to say it, but very businesslike, and everything's perfect, and they have the slide deck and all that. Sometimes that overwhelms smaller companies, because I don't know, they just like, they just feel like that person's not gonna.
Yeah, I agree with you. And when I jump on a sales call, or you have to have a human touch. You can have all the slides, all the technical jargon, and that's good. It has its place, but definitely have to have the human touch to it.
Right. And I'm not suggesting that you wouldn't.
And that's where you build trust.
Right. I'm not suggesting you wouldn't be prepared or what have you.
No, right. No, right.
So there's a lot. Another thing in my industry with quality, especially, there's really a lack of quality professionals that have experience in certain areas. And there's a lot of quality professionals that want to make the move to that area. and I think there's an opening there to help people with coaching or training, and I've thought about that before. But the whole idea of my book is really that I wanted to share these concepts that have been around for, hundreds of years. But
that's why I want people, and we're going to put a link to your book when we send this out to everyone. But it's been around for a while, but it takes somebody such as yourself, to say, hey, wait a minute, I can put this together and I can teach people how to manage this. And, and that's why I'm very interested in your book and our audience, I'm sure as well. Put it all together.
I hope so. And I actually made it's not super complex, but I created this spreadsheet that you can download from my website, no cost. And the idea is you read through the book up to, I think it's chapter 9. And then, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can go download this spreadsheet, and it's designed to kind of help you think through what I call sort of your story data. So, in this science of quality management too, there's a lot of use of data, so what is your data in your life? It's what has happened, and really look at what has happened without blaming anybody or thinking about why. Just, I have a list of questions. And then, looking at it, one of the big things is from a, gosh, it's late here. I'm having a brain freeze. Subjective and objective facts and information. So you really have to know the difference between the two. And when you answer a question, then ask yourself, was that question asking for a subjective opinion or, answer, or really objective? And then look at how you answered it, because it's really interesting, because a lot of people will give a subjective answer to a question that really is asking for an objective answer. And then you really start to see how your own perceptions and ideas can be holding you back. I don't know. It's hard. I should be able to explain it perfectly, but
I understand you perfectly. It's so interesting, and you're so right about that. So let's tell people where we can find you. Let's talk your website. Give us your web address.
Great. Okay. So my website for my writing, where you can learn more about my book, is my name. So PenelopePrezkop.com. Just have to be careful to, spell it.
We'll put the link on the bottom. They just have to click.
Right. And then my company, if you're in the pharma industry, my company website is pdcstrategy.com. The
company name is PDC Pharma Strategy.
PDC Pharma Strategy. But
the website is PDCstrategy.
Right.
.com. And we'll put that link as well, guys.
And then the book, of course, is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all those kind of places. So, you should
give us the title of the book again. Promote yourself. Will you give us the title again?
It's called 5-Star Career.
Yes.
Define and build yours using the science of quality management.
Perfect. And guys, we will put a link to that as well. Listen, this was a great interview. Very, very interesting. Thanks for coming, Penelope. And again, we're going to put the links down. Everybody can check her out. Get the book. I know I am. I'm super interested in this topic. This was great. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I hope people will check it out and benefit from it.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good one. Take care.
Thank you. You too.